Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back in. I got Kelly here with me from Cocoa Beach, Florida. I've been talking to Kelly since last summer. I think we went over the Robert Blake and Phil Spector murder trials. Tonight, we're going to talk about one that was very interesting to me when it was going on at the time. Drew Peterson, police officer from Illinois. Kelly, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Glad to have you back. So we're going to talk about Drew Peterson, right?
Yep, Drew Peterson.
So he was a police officer from Illinois, and how did the one he got convicted of? That wasn't the actual murder wife that was investigated at the time, right? That was a wife couldn't miss, correct?
Correct. So
Okay.
he was convicted of killing wife number 3.
Mm-hmm.
Wife number 4 is still missing.
Okay.
And they don't have enough evidence as of yet to really do anything with that.
Didn't they? Oh God, was it Rupert Murdoch? Didn't they pay to have that body exhumed and do a second autopsy?
Yeah. So apparently, I don't know if it was him or her family, but once it was talked about, and the 4th wife, Stacy, came up missing, they exhumed the body and found that she had a large gash on her head and had bruising that they couldn't explain. So it went from an accidental drowning to a drowning by homicide, where she basically fought him the whole time.
Okay, so this wasn't found in the first autopsy. We'll go ahead and walk us through it. So what happened? Let's go to the time on there. So well, just go ahead and start. You want to start with it?
All right. So back in the 70s, he graduates high school. He goes in to be an Army military police officer. Mm-hmm. Does very well. Gets out of the Army. Meets his first wife. They're married 6 years. She divorces him for cheating on him. He immediately marries wife number 2. They own a bar together, have some kids together. She also had a stepdaughter that lived there. Lots of domestic violence issues, that kind of thing. By this time, he's a cop up at the Bolingbrook, Illinois Police Department, and doing very well. And they're running a bar, and on the side, everything's going well. And then wife number 2, Vicky, finds out that he's having an affair with Kathleen.
Okay.
So she divorces him. He immediately marries Kathleen. Now that's important because that's wife number 3.
Okay.
So they're married. They have 2 kids. Everything's going fine. He's been promoted within the department.
Well, what years did it? Like 70s, early 80s?
Yeah, so we're into like the 80s, 90s at this.
Oh, okay.
So he gets promoted. He goes into their Metro Narcotics unit, and becomes a sergeant. He then becomes the 2007 police officer of the 1979 police officer of the year. So he's done very well. Runs the bar, no problem. Has a couple kids with Kathleen. Gives up the bar. I guess they finally sell the bar. At that point, everything seems fine with Kathleen, and then they decide they got to get divorced. Now, I couldn't find a whole lot on why they got divorced, but if you cheated with wife number 1 and you cheated with wife number 2, I'm gonna guess you cheated on wife number 3.
Good, probably a good guess there.
So she's found dead in the bathtub. They rule it accidental. Don't seem to think too much about it. Now, shortly after, accidental drowning. Gash on the head, but accidental drowning.
I've often wondered how an adult accidentally drowns in the bathtub. I guess it's possible, but
I mean, I guess it's possible, But if you have a gash on your forehead, like you had to have fallen forward to get I don't know. It doesn't make any. The gash is what does it for me. So he meets Stacy not long after, and him and Kathleen had divorced before she died, and everything was fine. He meets Stacy. Stacy is 19. Drew is 49.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that.
So big age difference.
What is it? What they call it? Oh God,
Robbing the cradle?
No. Oh God, Autumn Bride and December. Never mind. I'm about to mix up. Anyway, younger woman and an older male.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry.
They get married. Everything's good. They get married. No, doesn't seem to be any problems, any issues. They have 2 kids. The only real issue is her parents feel like he's a little too controlling. So does her sister. Just a little more controlling than they would like. And then in 2007, Stacy goes to her pastor and tells him that Drew killed Kathleen and told her so. And said that he made it to look like an accident.
Wow.
So apparently they start having problems again. Can't really find out about what. And her sister is expecting a phone call from her, and it never comes. She gives it a couple days, nothing, can't get a hold of her. So she calls Drew. And Drew informs her that he heard from her the night before at 9 o'clock. She apparently told him that she was leaving him for another man. Her car was at the airport, and that was it. The sister didn't believe that and filed a missing persons report. So that's what all led up to this.
Okay. That's what I was going to say. So now, while this is going on, missing her, that's when a judge, how do they get the body? Somebody have to sign off on this, right?
Yep. Somebody signed off to have Kathleen's body exhumed. Don't know. I'm sure it was a family member, maybe even one of his kids. I'm not sure. It's exhumed, found to have the gash on the head, the bruising, all of those things. It goes to a grand jury. And at first, they say that there is not enough. They're split on a trial. The prosecution's trying to bring in stuff they can't bring in. They're saying that what the Reverend says is hearsay, therefore it doesn't count. And the judge declares mistrial. Well, Peterson is exceptional.
This was in the grand jury, or this was after the grand jury? Okay.
The grand jury.
Grand jury or mistrial in a grand jury?
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. All right,
so
go ahead.
The prosecution goes for it a second time. And at that time, they again don't introduce the correct evidence. But at this point, it's up for trial. They've charged him. So they go ahead and give him the option. He goes to the court and basically says, I don't want a mistrial. I want this jury to decide my fate.
Well, he could have a mistrial declared then. He said, no, let's take it to trial.
Right.
God.
From everything I've seen, as far as interviews that have been done and, news reports and things, guy is extremely arrogant. He's one of those people that just thinks he's smarter than everyone in the room. So he does that only to be convicted.
I wonder what his attorney advised, because every lawyer I've ever talked to said, you take it, you push it off, and keep pushing it off, push it off, push it off, push it off as long as you can, because it's in your favor. The longer you can push it off, the more it's in your favor. Exactly.
So he was given, let's see here, I believe it was 40 years for Kathleen's death. He's indicted, charged with 2 murders. Well, through all of this, because again, he thinks he's the smartest person in the room, he decides to solicit a murder.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about this. Okay, yeah, tell us about this.
So he decides while all this is going on that the state's attorney, James Glasgow, he is the Will County state's attorney. He wants him dead because he thinks if he kills him, he ain't got nothing to worry about.
Oh,
So,
Lord. I forgot about that.
yeah. So here he is convicted for her murder, and then it then comes to light that he tried to have the other guy murdered. He offered somebody $25,000. Well, that didn't work. They ended up going to the police with it, where he was then charged with solicitation of murder and solicitation of murder for hire.
Oh, Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
What all did they have against him on is for life or death number? Just the gash on the head? Well, I mean,
Basically, the autopsy report, and the Reverend saying that she had told him that. Now his lawyer really argued on the hearsay that couldn't happen. When jurors were later questioned by news reporters and such, they said that the forensic evidence added to the hearsay made the hearsay just as important.
What happened? Why was there such a difference in the first court ruling and the second?
Well, depends on which conspiracy theory you want to read. The first one says that basically he's a cop in a relatively small town who had retired a few years prior. He was sitting happy with $6,000, I believe it's like $6,600 a month coming in on his pension.
What?
Yeah, had a couple of young kids. Life should have been grand, and he just thought he was better than everybody else. So that's one theory. The other theory is that he ran out of funds, wanted to take out a home equity loan, ended up having to sue JP Morgan Chase for the money, and therefore he was depleted of funds and did not have what he needed to get a proper defense.
Oh, okay.
I kind of go with the theory that given the climate come 2007 versus, I think it was 2002, the climate here in the US had changed, and crooked cops were being they were being outed. So my personal theory is he happened to get a new state's attorney who said, something doesn't fly here. Let's look at this again. How can a fourth wife go missing? And he just nailed him to the wall.
I remember during that trial, something that I found odd. They said that the jurors were dressing alike or in the same color attire. I don't know if they mentioned about that. If it was actually, people actually predicted the jury was going to quit because that was a sign they were all unison on something to get there, and they was predicting the jury was going to come out with an acquittal on that. I remember that being spoken.
Yes.
Okay. How long was this jury out?
Oh, I don't think it was long. A couple days, maybe. To me, it's a flimsy case, but when you have the fourth wife and the gash, kind of makes you wonder.
Yeah, I remember there wasn't a lot of. I don't think there was a lot of evidence in the case. One thing that bothered me was if it's true, and it may not be. If Murdoch had got involved, why are you digging up a body to have it, zoomed again,
right?
For headlines. But yeah, you're right. And I hate to say this because it's going to sound so bad, but the guy just gives me creeps when I look at him.
yeah. He's very, very arrogant. He has taunted news, journalists. He has, made his presence known. They've moved him, and I fully feel like he's been a problem in prison simply because they've moved him like 3 times.
Oh yeah, I can totally see that. Yeah.
So moving him 3 times in the course of like 3 years, that doesn't happen often. So, I mean, at this point, he's never getting out of jail. Marsha Clark, remember her from the OJ trial?
I think I recall that name.
She has a show, and she goes and talks to people about, different cases that have gone on. And she did some work on this case. I didn't watch all of it, but one of the defense attorneys says he thinks it'll show up after he's gone.
Thanks.
So,
Thanks. What will show up? He
body.
thinks the fourth
the body will show up. The fourth
gone?
wife, Stacy.
The defense attorney thinks after he's gone or after Drew's gone?
After Drew is gone, the body of Stacy will come up.
Okay.
But see, even that has its weird oddities.
I know. Weird. I mean, what did he tell him? That is odd.
Yeah, well, why it's odd. He had a friend who worked with him at a I don't know, someplace else other than a cop. He had like a part-time job, I guess. And they had available to them big bins, is the way it was put. Big blue bins. And he testified and had pictures of what they look like that he handed over to the police, saying, I gave him 3 of these. I don't know what for, but I went with him to go pick them up. His stepbrother, who was a drug and alcohol addict, helped him move one of these bins onto his truck. And when he found out all this was going on, he tried to commit suicide.
Interesting.
Yeah. So the lawyer says we'll find her, but it'll be long after he's gone.
That is a very odd statement there.
Yeah.
Okay. Got anything to add to this one, Kelly?
No, I mean it's a bizarre case. I mean, you don't have 4 wives and 2 come up missing like that.
Yeah.
That just seems so outlandish. The warrants seem to be all in place. They took his phones, his firearms, the cars. They went through the house. I can't see that he didn't do it, but I think he's just arrogant enough. He ain't gonna tell him where she's at.
Oh no, they rarely ever do.
Yeah, I don't think he will. So it'll be interesting to see what ends up playing out. Her sister is still very vocal about it and is still trying to find what she can. But I mean, at this point, she's probably gone. Where, no one knows. But she's buried somewhere in a blue bin.
I would think that's probably a pretty good guess there. It's interesting. The blue bin business, huh? I'll have to look into that one. This happened again around, you said 2007, 2008, 2006? Yeah. God, I can't believe it's been that long ago. Okay. Go ahead. All right, Kelly. Well, that was a good one. And